Hey, welcome back. Oh man, here's a question for you. Are you a poet? Are you a playwright? Do you ever dream of writing a play and performing in it? Performing your own work? Well, guess what? Our guest today is a playwright, he's a poet, and he's an actor of sorts. My name is Vin Dacquino. His name is Bruce Pearl. Bruce, welcome, buddy.
Thank you.
You and I know each other. You're part of the Hopac Writers Group, and I've heard you perform, which is why you're here. You did a great job, but I want to know, and they want to know, who is Bruce Pearl, and how in the world did you ever get into writing?
Well, I've been writing my whole life. From the earliest time, I loved poetry and poetry that tells a story, or plays in poetry. So I was actually an attorney for the last 32 years, working in the court system, research and writing, while writing poetry and plays at the same time and performing them and having them produced. And now I am retired.
Wow.
And I have more time.
Now, your father actually introduced you to poetry, is that right?
Yes, when I was 6 or 7, I remember him reading the dramatic poem, The Highwayman.
Oh, The Highwayman, what a great piece.
And the highwayman comes riding, 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 the highwayman comes riding up to the old inn door.
Wow. Yeah, so you got a taste for that very early.
Yes.
When did you actually write your first poem?
I started, I guess it was when I was in high school. I was taking Latin and translating Virgil, who wrote epic poem, the Aeneid, and I started translating it and reconstructing the poetry, because when you translate something from, translate a poem from another language, what you have is just a gobbledygook of prose, and then it has to be reconstructed to turn it back into a poem. And I also adapted the various works, the poetry works, to turn them into plays. And I've done both.
And even today you do some translating, is that right?
It's primarily, in terms of poetry, primarily what I do is translate Roman poets.
And you're a playwright.
Yes, I've written a number of full-length plays and a number of one-act plays which have been produced in theaters all over the Hudson Valley.
Wow.
Some of which I've directed and acted in myself.
Wow, wow. So that's great experience. What are the basic themes that turn you on, Bruce?
Poetry and stories, dramatic stories. That's what I do. I find a poem, typically more often than not Roman poems, that tell a story. And then I translate and reconstruct them into English verse.
Wow. Can you give us a little taste of that?
This is a poem. It was written by Ovid about 50 BC in Rome, and from a full-length work, The Metamorphosis. This is called Europa. After the god had punished that stupid girl for her insult to his love, his wings unfurled and rising back into the air over Athens, Jupiter summoned him. Nor did he speak then of love, but said, "Faithful messenger, by whom my will is to the world divulged, I order you to quickly fly to Sidon, and once there, swooping down to a light just west of where your mother's star is seen, drive the king's cattle unto the shore." This said, and having found the grazing herd, and by the god's true intent undeterred, he drove them near to where the king's daughter, as was her wont, played with the other maidens of Tyre. But as love and majesty seldom come together in one place, and having put off the raiment of his grace, this king of gods, whose right hand held thunderbolts and could convulse the whole world with a nod, having transformed himself into a great bull, who even the bovine found beautiful, he walked amongst them from pasture to surf, while appearing free of all bestial curse. For though bands of muscle circled his neck, and his head was by 2 short horns bedecked, they were so perfect, as if carved by hand. Nor was this deception by the god unplanned, for he was white as snow unsullied by rain, and so gentle seeming, as if to be tame. Agenor's daughter then, having viewed the beast all milk white and gentle, or docile at least, and while afraid at first to even touch him, she soon was bringing flowers by the bunch, happily feeding him from her own hand. He reveled in her, well pleased with his plan, playfully prancing for her through the grass, reclining wantonly on the strand at last, offering his belly, which she, though shy, petted, while stringing daisy with a girl's sigh about the polished candles of his horns, until, and having all modesty scorned, and unaware upon whom it was she sat, this virgin princess climbed upon his back. The god rose then, and striding into the surf, his false hooves splashing until, even worse, he bore her into the deep. The wind in her hair, and looking back as the strand disappeared, with one hand clutching an ivory horn, he carried her, wide-eyed, into that celestial dawn.
Wow. It's very visual. What about that piece grabbed you, Bruce?
It tells a story.
Yep.
And it was something that I could reconstruct into dramatic poetry.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. It is dramatic poetry. Now, this is kind of a far shot from what you did, what you just retired from. You were actually a lawyer. You are a lawyer. And the work you did was not quite as dramatic as some of the work that you're doing here. So does it take you away from your everyday? I mean, was it an escape for you?
I don't think of it as an escape, but in a sense, yes. It's just, I majored in math in college.
Really?
I became an attorney. I did research and wrote essentially legal essays every day. But poetry, to me, poetry is almost, is more
place.
like, I think of what I do almost more as writing lyrics to a song.
Wow.
But it has to tell a story and be dramatic.
And something about the Roman work that captivated you.
It just worked out that way because of the nature of what they wrote. Many of their works being very dramatic, with heroes and gods.
And lovers.
And lovers, though not all. I've also translated another Roman poet's work, Catullus, who wrote many poems about himself and his lover and the ups and downs of his love affair.
Oh. You mean there's ups and downs in love affairs?
I mean, actually, you probably have familiar with one line of one of his poems, because I know when we were in high school, I at least, there was Marlowe's poem that started, "Come be with me and be my love," which Marlowe stole from the first line of Catullus's poems, which was "Come be with me, my sweet, and be my love," which he wrote to his lover. He called her Lesbia. Actually, her name was Claudia, and she was married, and so he called her Lesbia in his poems so people wouldn't know who he was writing his love poems to.
I was always fascinated. When I was in college, I became fascinated with Shakespeare's sonnets. And I just fell in love with the whole idea of falling in love. I mean, those poems that he wrote, they were controversial in that they were not 100% sure who he was writing them to.
The dark-eyed lady of the sonnets.
Yeah. Or the boy or man of the sonnets. Yes. And I was just captivated by the whole fact that there was a mystery behind it, but they were so beautifully done. the sonnets had a very specific pattern. Do these Roman poems also?
No, the Romans, they have different verse forms, but they didn't use rhyme. So there's no rhyme scheme.
Oh, wow.
They did have a meter based on their language.
Right.
And when I translate, I often will use, depending on what I'm doing, so for instance with Catullus's poems, I will often reconstruct them in a sonnet or sonnet-like form just because it seems to me that it's what's suited to his work, and if Catullus had been writing in English, it probably would have been a sonnet.
Yeah.
So I have one of Catullus's poems.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, you do. This is, he didn't name them. Only one copy of his work survived, was found in a library of the 1500s.
Wow.
This is poem number 8, written to his married lover after she broke up with him.
Uh-oh.
Lovesick Catullus, please cease playing the fool and accept at last that what's done is done. There was a time when, as a white-hot jewel in the sky, I followed, whither you'd run, loving you as no girl had ever been loved. In that rapt time, wanting what I wanted, truly, envious heaven smiled on us. Now, finished with me, as if I'm dead, a stone I must harden my stubborn heart to endure. Farewell, little girl, it's done. That never again shall I seek out one so cold. Well, as for you, my sweet, parted now, what's left for us except misery? Who'll come to see you, tell you you're pretty, and love you as your lips tease out a song? Not I, for I vowed now to be strong.
Whoa. Not such a lovey-lovey song. Yeah. Where do you find these?
Well, I took Latin in high school and college, and I came upon a number of the famous Roman poets, Virgil and Ovid and Catullus, and
Yeah, and after reading them, you understand that they have a lot to say.
yes, and they're dramatic works that I can translate and reconstruct into dramatic English verse.
So you reconstruct these poems into verse. Now, you also put them into plays.
I have on occasion, so Virgil's Aeneid, people are often familiar generally with Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey because they made several movies called Troy. And Virgil wrote an epic called the Aeneid, which actually, people don't realize that the Homer's Iliad doesn't end with the horse and the Trojan horse. It ends with the death of Hector. The whole story of the Trojan horse and how the Greeks get into Troy is in the Aeneid, the sequel, the Roman sequel written about 50 BC. Mm-hmm. And also in the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, unless you're familiar with it, people don't realize that while it's essentially a novel, there is a lot of dialogue. The Iliad is maybe 50% dialogue.
Wow.
It's not all narrative. And so it struck me that it would be easy, good to turn it into a play and taking the dialogue and dramatizing.
Now, your play was actually performed?
Well, I've written 3 full-length plays that have all been performed in the Hudson Valley over the several years, and several one-act plays that have also been performed. And I have, this is a speech from my adaptation from Virgil's Aeneid into a play was called Dido, Queen of Carthage. And this is a speech by the goddess Juno, bemoaning the fact that while a goddess and she can see the future, she knows that thing, her patron land of Carthage will be destroyed in the future, and there's nothing she can do about it.
Yeah.
And so, hardly out of land sight, Sicily behind, joyously setting sail on the sea and beating with their bronze oars the salty foam, when Juno, serving ever her heart's hate, rages thus to heaven's vacant throne. Am I truly, by the fates forbidden, forced from my own plan, unable to turn this petty prince of Troy from deadly Rome? Could not Pallas, upon a will but her own, fire the fleet upon Neptune's waves, together with their hapless screaming slaves, and all for the mad crimes of Ajax alone? Was it not, as if sovereignty were on loan, she hurled heaven's fire, smashed the ships, and churning all the waters with howling whips of squalling rain, scattered them as they burned? Well, I, the gods' own queen, wife to heaven, must come here, hat in hand, unforgiven, waging war a lifetime against one tribe, that dastard offspring of that dastard's pride. Providence, who will now ever chant my name, worship my temples, or make obeisance to my fame? Iolus, king of the clouds and ruler of that keep wherein they live, the black clouds, the nimbus, the howling southern winds that give voice into the tempest's wail, and the squall lines run. Faithful Iolus, to whom it has been given by Jove our Father and the Lord of men, the power both to soften seas or the sky rend. Know that that tribe which I have ever driven to all points of the helm's compass and wheel, despite my hate, despite my divine zeal, does now at this moment's gentle ease crest the quiet waters of the Etruscan sea, bearing the gods of Troy to the boot of Rome. Let go, I pray you, your wild wind's fury, be my vengeance, drown them unburied beneath the riot of a once calm sea, or scatter them asunder. Do this for me.
Whoa. Whoa. So, where do you go from here, Bruce? Are you going to do some more?
I am now retired. I have more time to write.
Yeah.
I am in a local play that I did not write, but I was cast. And,
so you're still involved in theater?
Oh yes, that'll be going up in a theater in Rockland, February 22nd, called the Drama of King Shotaway by Sam Harps, who is a playwright and has a theater in Rockland, and.
So poet, playwright, actor.
I act primarily as a favor for people who cast me.
So that's not your first passion.
Yeah. No, I mean I really enjoy it, but I'm not very good at it.
I beg to differ. So, are there other pieces that you're looking to do?
Well, I'm writing all the time, and I'd written a one act, which was done a month or so ago in a theater in the library in Tompkins Cove, and I have many short works, short plays that I'm writing and looking to put on, because one acts are a lot easier to find a venue for and to put together. Having written and directed and produced, full-length plays, you're talking about a couple of months worth. Once you get them cast, and nobody's getting paid, and the actors are volunteers, and it's
hard to get them.
2 months worth of rehearsals. They have to memorize the lines, and so one acts are a lot easier to.
Yeah. And the nature of your work is not that easy to memorize either. Some of these things are a little difficult.
You know, well, the two sides of that are that I've written plays both in prose and in verse. And prose doesn't have to be memorized exactly. People, they memorize the lines, they can paraphrase, they can rearrange words and sentences, and it doesn't make a difference. Verse is like a lyric to a song.
Yeah.
You have to
Can't change it at will.
You have to memorize it word for word, or all of a sudden, roses are red, violets are blue, and this looks out of place. If you change a word, everybody understands.
They're going to know.
Even if they haven't heard it before, people catch that. But in a funny way, it's easy to memorize verse, particularly rhyming verse, because you hear each line. The wages of sin are death, or so they say, quoting from their book as they cry and pray. I say, getting old is the only sin, for it's but the shell, the cold out of skin of life without the substance. You hear the rhyme and it tells you what the next line is.
Okay, Bruce, a number of our people, our audience, are writers, and they're concerned about how, when, and where to write. And one of the things I've learned is that writers have a style of their own. Some writers write in the morning, some write in the afternoon, some write at night, some write in their underwear, some write out in the backyard. Tell me a little bit about your profile as a writer. When, where, and how do you write?
Well, for many years, because I was working full time, and then I wrote in the morning, I wrote lunchtime.
Whenever you could.
Whenever
just
I
all the
could.
time. Yeah. I was a teacher for 35 years.
Now
I
have
know the feeling.
Now I have all the time in the world.
Yeah. So now, have you thought about that?
I don't have a set time. It's just
Whenever the spirit moves?
as long as I'm working on something, then I'm first thing in the morning. I will have my coffee and I'll be writing. If not, then I'll be thinking about what I'm going to write.
Yeah, I write in the middle of the night because you know me well enough to know that I am busy all the time. And during the day, it's very hard for me to focus because the phone will ring, or I'll get emails, or someone will be at the door, or things that I have to do. So I like writing in the night. The only one that bothers me is the cat, who insists on sitting on the keyboard. But other than that, it's a quiet time and a time to focus. Do you write for any set time? 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours?
No, just as long
as it moves.
As long as it's moving. As long as I'm accomplishing something.
Right.
Invariably, in fact, when I'm working on something, and I get in the car and I'm going someplace, I'm constantly I'm running lines in my head, and I'm going, oh, I should change that word. I'm driving and I got a piece of paper and I'm scribbling notes to myself.
When I was first married, I was still involved in writing, and I went to my in-laws, my new in-laws, for Sunday dinners, and I'd be sitting there and my mother-in-law would look at me and say, "Stop writing!" And I say, "I'm not writing." She said, "Yes, you are." And she was right. I was.
Oh.
My head was like.
My wife
there.
does the same thing because since I'm often writing dramatic verse, or in fact dialogue in plays, I'm reciting, and my wife goes, "Stop that! You're embarrassing me."
Yeah.
Your lips are moving.
Yeah, that's right. And you get there and you get in there, but that's the idea. I try to help writers to understand that there's another world, and sometimes I go to that world, and it's a wonderful place to be. I used to sit down at like 6 o'clock in the evening, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, my wife would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Are you going to get ready for work?" And I'm like, "Whoa!" It's another place, and it's a feeling that non-writers have a hard time understanding. But it's true with many things, like art, music. It's a place to go. And I appreciate the fact that you go back centuries, and...
Well, that's just the starting point. The writing is writing.
yeah, I hear you. And the inspiration is centuries old. And sometimes the inspiration is the love affair of the kids next door, or the sunset, or whatever. The important thing is that you appreciate your writing. What are you working on right now, Bruce?
Well, I just started translating Ovid.
Oh,
that
okay.
poem I read today is the first poem tome of Ovid's that I translated. I just finished it, in fact, this morning. I am in the midst of translating the full Aeneid by Virgil, Catullus's works. I think I'm going to start doing Ovid's work, and I have 2 full-length plays that were both produced in the past, but I want to produce one of them again, and so I've been rewriting.
Well, you know, Bruce, I have some bad news for you. These people that you're translating had centuries to get their message across. You have about 1.5 minutes left in this show. Any final words you want to say to these people?
I hope to have one, if not more, of my plays finished and up again in the next few months.
Wow, good. So you got long road ahead of you. Bruce, when you're done, the door is open here. Come back.
Okay.
Share what you have. Let us know where your plays are being performed so we could actually see 1 or 2 of these. In the meantime, I can't thank you enough. And I can't thank you enough for being part of the Hopak Writers Group and sharing your work with us. Keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on writing. Keep on appreciating the work of others. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for being here and joining us today and understanding Bruce's passion. My name is Vin Dacquino. You were one-on-one with Bruce Pearl. Bruce, thank you for being here.
Thank you.